All right, we are here with Amazon expert Ryan Logan, and he will go over his presentation of Amazon keyword targeting and how it all works. So I'll hand it over to you, Ryan. Go ahead and teach me, drop the knowledge on Amazon keyword targeting, how the system works, how it all works, how you think about this. And so, yeah, looking forward to seeing your presentation here.
This is actually where it gets really fun on Amazon, because it's actually product related in relation to the market. Okay, so you're going to hear so many different perspectives from Amazon experts where they say you got to niche down, into something specific, and then you have these, and yet you have these other products that take the broad market by storm and they just kill it on Amazon. So you have to realize that there is place on Amazon for both products. You actually often see it where in the top of page, right, or on page one, you'll see a wide variety of products. You will see a low price product that is a general broad market winner, and they really take it by storm. But then there's sometimes where a niche product, one that is tailored, maybe it's a little bit more expensive, a little bit higher quality, but it's tailored more specific to the audience, starts winning out. And part of that is because the Amazon algorithm is fairly unbiased in that perspective. To a few points, there's some things that weigh heavily on that as far as click-through rate, obviously conversion rate. But conversion rate kind of comes and goes, but it has to do with more of where the interest of the market actually lies. The algorithm itself can naturally process what is going to be a trend setter. This is an example. So there's a general market and then there's sub markets. And so if product X is the general market expectation, okay, so when someone types in small flashlight, Amazon says, hey, when someone types in small flashlight, this is the product that they are anticipating seeing, okay? And they do that through SEO, through conversions, et cetera. Like Amazon has the data on that. It's not anything that's new or rare in that aspect. But then there's sub markets, right? So flashlight, 500 lumens or 1,000 lumens or 1,500 lumens, there are certain characteristics that make up a sub market, something that they are looking for specifically, right? And so for a general market, they could actually still be part of a sub market trend. However, there are parts that the algorithm actually adjusts for. Okay, so if product X, as an example here, I kind of said, hey, if product X is the general market expectation, so when someone types in small flashlight, Amazon says, hey, most people, or a good portion of the market, when they type in small flashlight, these are the products that they click on, and these are the products that they buy. However, product Y is eventually introduced to the market, and over time, it catches on and takes the sales velocity. It will become the new general market expectation. This happens a lot where we'll have a client or someone that we're consulting, and they're like, hey, my product used to be at the top, and then I ran out of inventory, or over time this new guy came in, now they're taking all the sales. And it's like, well, is your product outdated? There are actual product life cycles as it occurs even on Amazon. There's also trends of the market, something that is new that might actually come up and take the opportunity away. So anyways, that's kind of as far as general and sub markets there. As an example of a general market, bestsellers in the category: relevance, demand, and interest, customer expectations when they type in that search term, acceptable quality, sales velocity. Those are all things that Amazon actually keeps track of. And then sub markets, of course, which can be higher price, unique selling position, branding, lower price, reviews. So those are different things that actually be part of a sub market. And so this is, when I created this originally, it's like what we think it looks like is like, hey, when we type in small flashlight, this is what it looks like. But what it actually is it's made up of actual customer demographic or clusters, the same way that other platforms actually are too. So there are sub niches within each one. So even though if this is all of the keyword small flashlight, you might actually still have sub markets in there of different income than just a general or low income, or a high income. Some people always compare the top 10 listings. Some people only purchase on or click literally on the top listing because they're like they're in a hurry. Purchase only on weekends, never looks past the top 6 listings, read reviews, etc. Also purchase the sleeping bags. They're actually going camping. Only buys organic. Maybe that doesn't play as much of a role in small flashlights, but there is actually demographic information that is related to the organization of sometimes the products and how they lay out for Amazon. And so those are clusters that actually are there. So it comes back to what we can control. So Amazon has the search terms, the search volume. They have customers with interest, purchase behavior, demographics, and groupings. They have all that information. What we can actually only control is the campaign types, where the ad shows, kind of search terms to target, bids, budget strategies, listings, SEO, those types of things, right? And so it's important that we utilize those as best as we possibly can, which brings us back to this. Okay, during a product launch, because a lot of this is actually based on, okay, what is your product? Is it a niche product, or is it actually a general market product? During a product launch, it has been my experience that if you can get a hold of a general market, there's some ways that it works and some ways it doesn't. Okay, so if you are a brand new product and you only have 200 inventory in stock, Amazon will likely not let you actually get top of page one for a 40,000 search term or search volume term, or even possibly for a 10,000 or a 7,000 or a 5,000. Okay, but Amazon is probably okay with you actually taking kind of lower volume search terms. Okay, so that's why inventory management in launch is also very, very, very important to making sure that Amazon can control the experience of providing more traffic to you. During launch, traffic is really what matters. Okay, the traffic produces the traction. All right, and so when we first start off in a launch, the big thing is that maybe down here is it. This is like the optimization and the scale as far as a funnel. But when we first start a launch, we actually are over here in essentially an audience expansion. We want to provide Amazon with as many touch points of data as we possibly can. Okay, because Amazon sees a cluster of data, right? So they are doing this for our own product as well. It's not just, oh, do we convert for a search term? Amazon is also seeing how do you convert, and how well do you do on an audience based, or with a customer demographic as well. Okay, and so getting as many touch points here matters. Amazon wants to actually see, is your product going to be a general audience, or is it going to be a niche audience product, or is it going to be a hybrid between the both? Amazon can figure that out as far as the algorithm. So it's all about just training that algorithm the way that we need to. And so as far as first point, it's we really are trying to do as much as we can to get the traffic that we want. We want as many impressions, we want as many sessions, we want as many clicks essentially as we can. And then we can actually adjust those things to get to the proper conversion rates that we actually need, or a page one competitor, and hopefully a top page one competitor. We do that with pricing, with the images on the listing. We can actually do that. In addition, when we actually launch a product, if you are brand registered, which we always recommend that you do get, in order to unlock manage experiments such as title tests and main image tests and these other things that are pretty basic that you actually really want for a conversion and click through, the best way to do that is you actually have to, Amazon says this, you have to have a certain amount of traffic for that to unlock for a product. So even within Amazon's game, so to speak, they actually say, hey, traffic and impressions and sessions matter for us to actually do any type of a split test. And so during a launch, the sooner that we can unlock that split test opportunity within the brands, that does matter. So during a launch, this is really where we want to hang out. Okay. And over time, we're going to get enough demographic information, enough purchases, enough clicks, and everything, where eventually we can actually start, like ads themselves will start to kind of optimize. So this is actually pretty normal. Sometimes if you let campaigns kind of run for about 2 to 4 weeks here, you'll actually see where you'll start off with maybe a really high A cost, and it can actually fluctuate within about a uh, I'll just throw out numbers. Like you'll start off with maybe 100% ACOS. Okay, really high. It's not going great, but you leave it here in this audience expansion, and Amazon starts finding the demographic that it starts converting for, and naturally it'll actually start coming down to like ballpark range of like a 70 to like a 70% ACOS within this audience expansion or testing period. Okay. So some people call this the discovery phase. If you're familiar with anyone else on Amazon who's talked about the different phases, this is going to also be during launch what they call the discovery phase. I've used that term before. You'll probably hear it in some of my other videos also. Discovery phase is also this audience expansion. Okay. In fact, I have somewhere else on this same slide where I actually talk about the discovery phase. So discovery phase is here testing out the different demographics. Once you kind of flatline here, you kind of get to this cusp right here where you're actually entering an optimization phase, and you can actually change potential bidding strategies. You can change it from maybe a fixed bid if you're starting with a fixed bid, or if you're doing a dynamic bid up and down, you can change it to dynamic down, which is normally an optimization phase. And then you kind of optimize and you get rid of ones that you're like, okay, this one doesn't produce enough sales for me to really like, and I'll remove that keyword, and I'll remove this keyword in my campaigns. Then it eventually comes down to where you kind of have your campaigns that actually do pretty well. And sometimes, like I said, this is a broad, if yours is a broad market competitor, then your audience expansion, this is actually a very small funnel. Like instead of it being this big thing that you actually narrow down, like you whittle away, it actually could stay pretty firm. But if you ever get down to the scale phase and you're here and you're like, hey, I've optimized my listing so good, I've got a 10% ACOS, I'm not a like a top competitor. This happens a lot where some clients come to us and they say, hey, we have optimized our bid so well that we have a really low spend. And it's like, okay, great. How are your sales? And if they're not ranked at the top of page one, of course, they're not going to have a whole lot of sales, but they're like, but I got a good ACOS. And it's like, oh, good for you. Amazon knows who's buying your product, but you're not really supplying much opportunity for the expanded audience. So this actually comes back to, once you're at scale, if you want to actually grow and you want to actually scale, notice you can't really scale at this part of the funnel. It actually doesn't make sense. You actually have to shoot up. Yes, let's say that you cut out this part of the audience, everything that's actually over here as far as in this triangle, instead of this, you actually find out that this is where you scale as far as the farthest width. So then you shoot up just within this range, where essentially you keep the parameters of, hey, up to this edge and to this edge. And as long as we can go up, that's where the scale actually happens. But you do actually kind of have to go back up through the audience expansion and up through the optimization phase to actually do that again. And so it kind of comes in peaks and valleys.
Because the yeah, the bigger audience is going to be where the bigger sales are. And to kind of recap, at first, it's going to be a discovery phase. Amazon's algorithm is going to be testing out all different types of shoppers, different keywords with their campaigns. Eventually, it will kind of auto optimize, and then you're going to do the fine tune optimizing based on your goals, ACOS, TACOS, and all of that. Eventually, where you have it more of a hyper targeted keyword and audience. And then you'll see where you are, but it may be, okay, that's a little bit too narrow of an audience.
Right.
Maybe there's not enough sales. Let's make it broader a bit in order to increase our sales velocity and have it reach even more people. That may be a little bit higher ACOS, but it depends on your goals for sales velocity balanced with ACOS.
Right.
So
ACOS, TACOS, whatever that metric is that you're using. Totally.
Yeah. All right. So what is this keyword funnel graph you got going on here?
Oh yeah. So this just kind of goes back to that same, it's that same like audience expansion, optimization, and profit. It's just from a search term perspective. So as far as campaigns, as far as the different type, so discovery or the audience expansion campaign, right? So they're kind of both that top part of the funnel. So you're finding or expanding or testing out certain audiences. And so a lot of times what will happen if you're not doing keyword research, you can actually just start with these types of campaigns. And Amazon, like I believe I've mentioned this in one of the other videos, based on what your generic search terms are, okay, and the SEO that you've actually done, Amazon can have a pretty good idea as to what your product should actually start off with competing against. And so you can start an auto campaign, you can start a category campaign, a complementary or sponsored display audiences, and Amazon will say, okay, well, based on your browse tree node, and then also the search terms and everything else, this is kind of where you should hang out as far as this cluster, right? Since we already talked about cluster, as far as that, we'll kind of stick with that. They'll say this is kind of where you should hang out, and over time, it'll find opportunity in sales that you then say, okay, actually, we are showing up under, if we use that same small flashlight analogy, small flashlight 1500 lumen, that actually we're making sales over here. We can actually take that keyword and move it over here into the research or the test the audience. And we start with a broad match or a phrase match. We start testing out those different terms. It's a much slower process, but you can still do it this way. And so in the research or testing the audience, you're going to find out from the discovery phase or the top part of the funnel, things that are working. You're going to move it to another part of the phase, which is that research. And then they're going to produce really terms. You're going to see data showing, hey, these terms consistently produce sales. Even if they're not at a great ACOS, they could be something that even at a high ACOS we can rank for because our conversion rates are actually okay with it. Especially if we can get top of search bids, and then we test that out a lot more under what is. So you have to be pretty unbiased in these first two parts of it. You're just looking for sale, like click through and sales. Those are really what matter. And then you move it to what is relevant. And then after the relevancy, that's when you start getting a little bit more biased. You say, okay, well, my product isn't this or it's not that. You can do that in these same phases too, as far as if you know, if you're selling like a metal flashlight and it's popping up under like plastic flashlight or even some sort of term that you're like, we are not that term. Like, why are we showing up under pogo sticks, right? Something like that. You can clearly remove pogo sticks. That is like, use common sense in a lot of these things and get rid of those types of terms. But over here, this is where you're going to find those relevant things. So this is one way to do it without actually doing the keyword research. If you're like, hey, I don't have the time. However, you can fast pace this step by actually doing the keyword research, which is what we do. This is what like the absolute best practice is, to do the keyword research ahead of time. You probably should have done it before you even created the listing anyways, because you're doing SEO. So why not take it a few steps further and take that same information that you already gathered and produce good ads in relation to that same thing, right? So really it's just about using your time efficiently and doing a little bit more extra, like a little bit extra work to produce heavy lifting right at first, so that you can actually kind of skip a huge funnel. Because at first, maybe if you do something like this, the funnel is this big because it's just based off of audiences and category, and that's where Amazon starts. But you can actually say, hey, based on search terms, you can actually potentially narrow that funnel to where it's more like this. And you're like, these are the parameters that I want to work with. And so it's more about just training the algorithm in a good way. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
So I'm okay to probably go away from these slides. I don't know if there's anything here. This is a whole nother thing that we can get into. Well, I mean, maybe I will go into this and you can create another video on this. This goes into this same perspective here.
Mm-hmm.
You'll often hear some experts who talk about buying intent versus just general search terms. Okay. Now, what's interesting on Amazon, okay, Amazon is a platform that has high purchase intent. When someone gets on Amazon, it's very rare that they're just like looking to look. You're going to find those people. There always is, right? But then there are search terms that have higher buying intent. And we're going to stick with the small flashlight analogy. Okay. Someone is like, oh, I'm going camping. I need a small flashlight. They type in small flashlight. As soon as small flashlight pulls up, you see tons and tons and tons of different types of flashlights. They might browse around a little bit and go, I've now realized I do want a small flashlight, but I'm going to attach a longer tail opportunity there. And I am going to actually go for a small flashlight, 1500 lumens, right? Or 2000, 10,000 lumens, whatever it is. Or maybe they want a tactical flashlight of that same capacity or caliber or whatever, right? And so this has to do with all the search terms. This would be small flashlight. Typed in small flashlight, it's usually the broader terms, or the kind of the root terms are going to be short tail, 1 to 3 keywords, depending on the category and the search volume associated with that. A lot of times what you'll find is the higher the search volume, in the ranges of like upwards of 10 to 15,000 plus, you will find subsets of the market who are looking for not just that product, but actually a subset. And that comes down to, is your product actually a subset product, or is it a general product, right? So and we covered that previously. So is it actual all the search terms, small flashlight, or is it small flashlight, 10,000 lumens, or the highest intent, small flashlight, 10,000 lumens, waterproof, right? Because they're looking at multiple features, and if your product fits within those features, you want to show up there. And so you can actually do different. So a lot of times people will refer to this as the highest buying intent. A lot of times is actually in the longest tail search term. And with exact campaigns, if we come back to here, it can be really hard. If you're working off of this type of a system, it is really hard to find exact campaigns that are going to get traction on every single long tail opportunity, which means if you are operating on this type of a phase where you are only wanting to hang out where there's relevancy and where there's high buying intent, you're going to have a lot of exact terms, and you're going to utilize the phrase match campaigns different than almost any other strategy. Okay, so this actually comes down to your high buying intent exact terms. You're going to put in there consistent ones that have good search volume, because otherwise you're not going to get a whole lot of traction. The phrase match is actually going to be kind of at the top part of this buying intent, just in case you're going to find a few every single month that there's no way that you would even possibly have an exact campaign that would actually cover that. And the only way to do that is by putting a phrase in there that says, if someone ever puts in the phrase small camping flashlight, 1500 lumens or 15,000 lumens, I want to pop up for that. If they add anything before or after that, I want that phrase to be covered. You're actually going to use that as a conversion campaign rather than an audience test campaign or a research campaign. It's just a different way of harvesting and a different mindset that's associated with it. Because a lot of times, if you're doing a research and you're actually funneling it down here, what a lot of people will suggest, this is the type of structure that you're going to do, is to actually negate the search terms that are coming in here as you pull them into your exact campaign. Whereas if you are actually doing kind of an expansion of your exacts, you're actually not going to negate those terms because you want them to show up in the phrase match campaigns, because those are going to be your long tail buying intent opportunities. Does that make sense? I worry that this might be a little too high level. It might be a little too high level, Riley.
No, we're good. We want to be high level. We're going high level.
Be high level. We're going to be high level. Okay. I'm good with presentations. I'm okay to move away.
Okay, cool. So that is keyword, Amazon, algorithm, funnels, how it works, the philosophy behind it. So let's move into, you just received a new product and you're doing the keyword research using Helium 10. What is your thought process and what are the steps that you follow?